Order of operations, the basics. So when you simplify expressions and it involves real numbers and or variables, then you must follow something called the order of operations. So there's a couple of really common ways to remember the order of operations. One is PEMDAS, P-E-M-D-A-S. The other has PEMDAS in it, but it's please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So I learned please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, but I have many, many, many students who come in and say, PEMDAS, PEMDAS, PEMDAS. So those are the two most common ways that I am familiar with, and there may be others, and you may know other ways, and that's fine. You can use that. So PEMDAS, what does PEMDAS mean? Why are we interested in P, E, M, D, A, and S? So the P stands for parentheses. You work everything inside the parentheses before you do anything else. And as we go through these, we'll talk about parentheses. We'll even talk about some implied parentheses. Right? I talk a lot about fractions. If you write a horizontal fraction line, it's implied that the numerator's in parentheses, the denominator's in parentheses, and the entire fraction's in parentheses. So you want to simplify that whole thing before you go on to anything else in the problem, even if you don't see parentheses there. And I think I have one or two like that in the examples here that we're going to work. After the parentheses, you do the exponents. Any exponent that's there. And by the way, while you're in the parentheses, you follow PEMDAS again. So you may have PEMDAS inside PEMDAS, okay? So parentheses first, exponent second. All right? The next thing that you do, multiply. You multiply and then you divide. You actually do multiply and divide as you get to them from left to right. So you start from the left, and as you move from the left, you do multiply and divide as you get to either one. So if you get to division first, do it first. You get to multiply first, do it first. If you can do multiply and then a divide, then a multiply and then a divide. However you do it, just go left to right with them. Then add, the A is for add, and subtract. And you can do adding and subtracting in any old order you want to. You can subtract or add, put all the adds together, put all the positives, all the negatives, put them together. However, you could add, subtract, subtract, add, subtract. It doesn't matter. However you want to do it. So the order of the parentheses and exponents is very strict. You must simplify everything inside the parentheses first. Then you must take care of every exponent or power next. There is no ambiguity. There's no doubt. You can't go, oh, well, I feel like doing the exponents first this time. No. Now, let me say this. There are times when you can work something out of order, and then by luck you get it right. So again, rather than know when I can do this and when I can't do this, we're going to focus on following the order of operations. Now, when problems start to get a lot bigger, you can do the order of operations per term. So if pluses or minuses separate terms. So if I have a whole bunch of stuff plus a whole bunch of more stuff plus a whole bunch of more stuff, I can simplify the stuff before the first parenthesis, come to the next one, do that one, and use PEMDAS with each one of those, or the order of operations with each one of those. So then, as we get down to multiply and divide, it's a little less strict. You actually multiply and divide as you get to them from the left. We talked about it. So it's like they're on the same level. It could be PEMDAS, okay, or PEMDAS, because look at add, subtract. Not strict at all with regards to order. You can actually add or subtract in any order you wish, but be careful to keep up with your sign, though, right? If you're adding or subtracting, right, same sign you add, keep the sign. Different signs you subtract, keep the sign larger. So keeping track of your signs is very important when you're adding and subtracting, but the order that you do it in is not important. So let's look at some examples here. So we're going to start, everything on this page is something to a power. All right, and I even have one of my favorite things to ask up here on tests and that kind of thing to quiz students on, because it may not be taught incorrectly, but sometimes students are allowed to write things down, or they write them down in spite of their teacher telling them not to. So we're going to talk about correcting it, and if you do that on my test, I'm going to count off. I'm going to keep doing it until you start writing it correctly. So hopefully you write it correctly now, and it won't matter. So 10 squared, what does it mean to square something? That little raised 2 is a square, it's an exponent. It means to multiply 10 by itself, so 10 times 10. This means, so we're going to write down what it means. 10 times 10, and you can do a dot, you can do parentheses, but do not use an X here. If you do old school multiplication where you line up decimals and you put a little X out there with a line under it and do that, that's fine for that. It's the only time you can use it in my class in algebra. But use a dot or parentheses. So what is 10 times 10? It's 100. Now, if you said, Mr. Guest, I can do that in my head, I would completely believe you. So I'm going to put this in a thought cloud. we're basically thinking about it, but I want to write each one of these down because I want you to see what the power means and what it's applied to. So look at the next one. -7 squared. And are there parentheses here? No. So what is being squared? Remember, order of operations says, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, PEMDAS. There's no parentheses. We next do exponents. We say, that's easy, Mr. Guess. It's -7 times -7. Nope. It's 7 times 7. This is the exponent. The negative is stuck out front. It's like the negative is being multiplied by the 7. The 2 is an exponent to the 7. So what's really happening here, if you were to write this out, you have a negative sign, and then in implied parentheses, you have 7 times 7. You're squaring this in here, okay? So that's in my little thought cloud. So what is a 7 times 7? It's 49, and then negative is going to be what? -49. -49. Because the negative is just one negative sign out front, and you're only squaring the 7 there. So what about the next one? -8 in parentheses squared. -8 in parentheses squared. That's going to be -8 times what? -8. You could put a dot if you want to, but typically with negatives we put in parentheses here. So again, this is going to be my thought cloud, but do you see the difference? That -8 is all in parentheses, so you are squaring everything in the parentheses. -8 times everything, -8 again. But on the -7 squared, just the 7 is squared and the negative's out front. So if you were allowed to write this and you meant -7 times -7, then that's not good at all. Not good if I do it and let you do it or somebody else lets you. It doesn't matter. It's just bad because that's not what that is. It's not what that is. So a negative times a negative on this one, -8 times -8 is +64. 8 times 8 is 64. Negative times negative is a positive. What about 5 to the third? We call that 5 cubed. That means 5 times 5 times what? 5. 5 times 5 times 5. That's in my thought cloud. And in fact, I'm going to stay in my thought cloud. What is 5 times 5? 25 times 5. What is 5 quarters? $1.25. So 5 times 25 is 125. So 5 times 5 is 25 times 5. So 25 times 5 is 125. So 5 to the third power, or 5 cubed, is 125. What does the next one mean? -1 in parentheses to the 8th power. How many times? What am I multiplying together? -1, because the negative is in parentheses. I'm saying -1 times -1 times -1 times -1, 8 times. 8 -1s. So let's go ahead. I know it's a lot to write down, but I wanted to show you this. -1, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm kind of filling in the space over there with that one. All right, so let me go ahead and just kind of do this here, just kind of section it off. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, that were 8 of them, right? So there's 8 there. So again, that's what's happening. If I'm thinking about it, I got how many negative signs? I got 8. Well, that's an even number, right? The first pair makes a positive, the next pair makes a positive, and you got 4 pair that all make positives. So now there's no more negatives. The answer is positive. So this is positive. And what's 1 time 1 time 1 time 1 time 1 time 1? Right, 8 times is 1. So that answer is just good old 1. Positive 1. That's because you have 8 negative signs there. And each pair, the first and the second make a positive. Third and the fourth make a positive. Fourth and the fifth and sixth make a positive. Seventh and eighth make a positive. What about -1 with no parentheses to the 8th power? What's being raised to the 8th power here? That's right, just the 1. 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 4. 5, 6, 7, 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then what's out front? 1 negative sign. 1. So then 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, 8 times is 1. And what's out front? A negative. So -1 is -1 to the 8th power with no parentheses. You see the difference between the two? Because if you're in my class, you can go ahead and mark it down. I'm going to ask you 2 problems like that. They may not be 7 and 8. It might be -4 squared with no parentheses and -12 squared with parentheses, or something else. It's going to be on there, though, if you take one of mine. one of mine being one of my tests. So here, look, these two problems at the top really are combining like terms, but the reason they are is the only operation we have on this one is what? Adding. So guess what? Then that's what I do. Can I add them together? Can I add them together? Well, they're both x cubed, which makes them like terms. So then 18 plus 4 is how many? 22, and then we leave it x cubed. So 22x to the third or x cubed. And then the one beside it again is just two terms, but this time we're subtracting not because there's a minus sign, but because one is positive and one is negative. That's when you subtract. That's the only time you subtract. Not because there's a minus sign, but because the signs are different. So here, the 24 is positive, the 1 is negative. So we have like terms. My answer is going to have an x squared, and then I have 24 minus 1 is what? 23. So 23x squared. So again, that was more combining like terms, and I have videos on that as well if you need to go look those up and get some help with that. All right? But the bigger idea is how many x squareds do you see here? There's 1. So 24 minus 1 is 23. You don't write that down, the 1 per se, but that's how you know it's there. You see the x squared, you know there's at least 1 there. All right, what about the next one? 4 plus 3 times 5. So do I do 4 plus 3 is 7 first? No. PEMDAS, right? Which one comes first, addition or multiplication? Multiplication comes first. And notice I underlined the plus because that plus goes with that 3. It doesn't go with the 4. So what is a positive 3 times 5? Positive 15. So 4 plus 15. And then if I want to simplify that, 4 plus 15 is how much? 19. And look at the next one. 60 divided by 6 times 2. Whew. So what comes first, division or multiplication? Well, you say, well, multiplication, Mr. Guest, PEMDAS, right? Remember I told you it could be PEDMAS. Multiplication and division are on the same level. You do them as you get to them from left to right. So the very first thing I get to is division. That means I go ahead and do it. 60 divided by 6 is 10. And then divided by, nope, I already did the division. Then I'll do what? Bring down my times 2, don't I? So I have to bring this thing down here once I get the other part done, right? I did all this to get 10. Bring down the times 2. What is 10 times 2? 20. 10 times 2 is 20. So 21 minus 16 divided by 4 plus 7. So do I do 21 minus 16 first, negative 16 divided by 4 first, or divided by 4 plus 7 first? We do division first, right? Of addition, subtraction, division. Definitely do division first. So I already know I have a 21 and a plus 7. And then my next is negative 16 divided by positive 4. What's a negative divided by a positive? Positive. So I'm going to put, a negative divided by a positive is not positive. What is it? It's negative. A negative divided by a positive is negative, so I'm going to write my negative sign. And what is 16 divided by 4? It is 4. So 21 minus 4 plus 7. Does it matter what you do first? It does not matter. I'm just going to take the first two and put them together. That's how I typically do it, unless something really flows well and works together and makes a nice, neat number or cancels or something. So here, 21 minus 4 is 17, and bring down the plus 7, right? Tack this on at the end here. And then what is 17 plus 7? 24. 24. And then we have 10 squared minus 100 divided by 5 squared times 3 minus 9. All right, what do I do first? Well, do I have any parentheses? No. Do I have any understood parentheses here? No, not really. What do I do next? Exponents. That's right. So I'm going to do 10 squared and 5 squared. What is 10 squared? 100 minus 100 divided by 25 times 3 minus 9. Do I do 100 minus 100 and get 0? I hope you said no. right? The reason I don't do subtraction yet is because I have a division in there, right? And a multiplication. I've got to do both of those. So do them as you get to them from left to right. So I'm going to do this one. So this is 100. Negative 100 divided by 25 is going to be negative. Negative over positive is negative. 25 goes into 100 4 times, and then tack on your times 3 minus 9. So this is going to be 100, and now we multiply it. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12 minus 9. So that's going to be, what do we do first now? Right, we had to do the multiplication first because we didn't do it subtraction before multiplication. Now we have just 2 subtractions, so I'm just going to do the first one. 100 minus 12 is what? 88 minus 9. 88 minus 9 is 79. Two times 5 in parentheses squared minus 2 times 5 squared. No parentheses. So let's see what happens here. Do I have parentheses? Yes. I do this first. 2 times 5 is 10. And then I do what? Square it. Minus 2 times 5 squared. What is 10 squared? 100. Negative 2 times 5 to the third. 5 squared. So simplify that. Now we're ready to do what? This power and this power. Right? We did 100 minus 2, and then what? Times 25. And then we're going to take this and do multiply before we subtract. So it's going to be 100. And then negative 2 times 25 is negative 50. 100 minus 50 is 50. 100 minus 50 is just good old 50. (36) divided by 3 squared divided by 11 minus 8 minus a negative 5. Wow. So the first thing I should do is parentheses. You go, well, Mr. Guest, there's not any parentheses that need work. Okay, and remember I told you terms. Here's a new term starting. So really you can take care of this separate than this because they're in different terms. Okay? But we're just going to follow the order of operations very strictly here. It'll cost us a few steps, but that's okay. Let's follow it strictly. And then when we get better at it and we understand it, then we can start skipping a step if we need to, or if we know that that works in that scenario. We don't want to do that when we're learning because we may skip steps that are necessary or not quite figured it all out. So right here, 36 is going to stay the same. It's understood parentheses, and the whole thing. So you're going to simplify this entire fraction before you do anything else over here or over here. So this is going to be 36 divided by, what do I do here? I have a fraction. What is 3 squared going to be up here? 3 squared is 3 times 3 is 9. What about 11 minus 8? What goes down here? 11 minus 8 is 3, and then minus a negative 5. I'm going to just tack that on the end right now. But I mentioned that being a new term, so if you saw what happens, if you see what happens and already know the sign, that's fine. So this is going to be 36 divided by 9 over 3 is 3. And then I'm going to go ahead and put minus a negative 5, but really you want to simplify it down to one term or one sign. So, and look, I'm going to either add or subtract here. Well, let's go ahead and simplify it. We're going to say this is going to be 36 divided by 3, and then minus a negative is really positive, so it's going to be plus 5. Do I do 36 divided by 3 or 3 plus 5 first? You do 36 divided by 3 all day long, right? 36 divided by 3 is 12. That's not 12. Plus 5. Which is what? 36 divided by 3 is 12. 12 plus 5 is 17. 17. So here, -2, and then -2 plus 4 in parentheses, all to the third power, -4, and then -5 plus 7 in parentheses to the third power. So parentheses, we have some, so let's go ahead and work here. It's going to get -2. And then what is -2 plus 4? That's a +2, and cube it. -4, -5 plus 7 is going to be what? It's going to be something cubed. 2, right? +2. So this is going to be -2 times, and then we'll do the exponents. 2 cubed and 2 cubed is 8 minus 4 times 8. Now what do? I multiply, right? -2 times 8 and -4 times 8. So -2 times 8 is -16. -4 times 8 is -32. Right? Negative times positive is negative, and then 2 times 8 is 16. 4 times 8 is 32. Then when they're both negative, so what do? I add them together and keep it negative. 2 negatives, you add it together and keep it negative. What is 16 plus 32? 48. And remember, it's negative. So -48. Two, and then a bracket, 5 plus 3, parentheses, 10 minus 6, and close parentheses, close bracket. I use brackets and parentheses, and they mean the same thing. Sometimes people don't, they just use parentheses inside parentheses, so they would have, 2, and then 5 plus 3, and then open, and it would be close over here. A bracket is a parenthesis. It's the same thing. There's no special anything needed. Once we're logged in and good with it, we're good. So, I don't know why I said logged in with it, but anyway, once we're there, parentheses, brackets, it's all the same thing. So 2, and then we have 5 plus 3, and we're going to do the inside parentheses first, because inside this bigger parenthesis, we have to do PEMDAS. And inside there, we have another parenthesis we have to do. So we have to work our way inside out. So it's going to be 4 bracket. It's going to be 2 times 5 plus, now we multiply this. 5 plus 12. I didn't put a bracket. Let me fix that. And then put these together. That's going to be 17. That's going to be 2 with the bracket 17, which just means multiply them. 2 times 17 is 34. So we had to go from the inside out. In the bigger bracket, we had to do 10 minus 6. It's 4. Then we had to do 3 times 4 because we didn't do 5. We don't do 5 plus 3. We do 3 times 4. So 5 plus 12. Then we add that together because it's in brackets or parentheses. That's 17. Then we finally take that 2 on the outside times that 17. And we get 34. Six squared minus 4 squared over 1 minus -4. So you look at this and go, well, how do I do PEMDAS on this? Well, it's got parentheses, and I don't mean the minus and -4. Remember, it's a fraction, so it's got this and then the whole thing, right? So simplify the top, simplify the bottom, the numerator, denominator, and then simplify the whole thing. So in the numerator up here, what are we going to do first? Well, there's no parentheses there. They're understood to be around it, but inside there, it's exponents. So we're going to do 6 squared and 4 squared. That's going to be what? 36 minus 16. And really remember, that's still in parentheses, understood. So let's go ahead and finish that. 36 minus 16 is what? 20. Now there's nothing else I can do to the top of the numerator. So I'm going to move on to 1 minus a -4 here. 1 minus -4. It's going to be, let's see, what do I do with minus a negative? Well, I want to change it to one sign. It's going to be 1 plus 4, right? And what is 1 plus 4? It's going to be 5. Now that's simplified, so then if it was a different number of steps, I'd just bring the 20 down or bring the 5 down to the last step. So 20 divided by 5, does 5 go into 20? Exactly what? 4 times. So So 20 over 5 is 4. Three-fifths minus 7/10 over 1/2. So here we have fractions inside a fraction. Fractions inside a fraction. Wow. So technically speaking, we need to simplify this, and then we're dividing. Look, this fraction line is the same thing as division, right? We keep, change, flip. We'll change it to multiply, and we'll flip this fraction and take it a reciprocal. So that's what we should do. Now, typically speaking, once I get far enough into algebra and things, if I have something like this, I'll attack it a little differently. But for now, because we're talking about order of operations, we're going to do this way, okay? This is in parentheses. So we're going to take it and we're going to say, I'm going to take this out here in a thought cloud, and I want to figure out the numerator. I want to say 3/5 minus 7/10. And I left space here on purpose. Because what is my LCD? It's 10, right? So I need to put something over 10 minus something over 10. Well, that's already 7 over 10, right over here. That's already the same thing. But this is not over 10. What do I need to multiply by to get it over 10? 2 over 2, right? So then we multiply straight across. 3 times 2 is 6. 5 times 2 is 10. So we have 6/10 minus 7/10. Well, that's going to be 6 minus 7 over 10, right? That's why it's over a common denominator. 6 minus 7 is negative 1 over 10. So then we're going to bring this back into our fraction, negative 1 over 10 divided by, we just bring this 1/2 down. So I used that thought cloud there because look how much work I had to do. I had to get a common denominator and put two fractions together and all these other things. So rather than keep writing that whole fraction with 1/2 under it every step, that's just confusing to me. I went out to the side. This is confusing enough by itself, right? I went out to the side and said, hey, let me figure out what my numerator, my top is going to be when I simplify those fractions with a common denominator. So then, again, we change and we flip. So we're going to say negative 1/10. We're going to change it from divide to multiply and then flip it to 2 over 1. And then we say, okay, does anything divide out? Well, 2 goes into 2 once and 10 5 times. And then a negative times a positive is negative. So negative 1 times 1 is 1. 5 times 1 is 5. So when the 1 is in the top, the numerator, you can't change it. You can't take it out. If it's 5 over 1, that's when you leave it 5. But when it's 1 over 5, you have to leave it 1 over 5. And in this case, it's not just 1 over 5. It's negative 1 over 5. And so here, these last few problems, you're going to be given an expression with variables, letters, algebra, right? X squared minus 2x, and then a colon. We're told, hey, wait a minute. X is 6. So we have an expression, x squared minus 2x, and we want to substitute 6 for x. We're told x is the same thing as 6, so plug 6 in. So then we're going to say this is going to be 6 squared minus 2 times 6. On this, the parentheses are extra, but just in case if it was negative, you'd have to have them. So I'm always going to put a parenthesis when I plug something in, even if it's too much. So order of operations, there's nothing to do inside my parentheses. Yes, there are parentheses up here, but there's 6 inside both of them. I can't do anything to 6 that's inside there. So this is going to be 6 squared, which is going to be what? 36, and then minus 2 times... Well, I'm just going to leave it 2 times 6 right now. Although it's a new term, you could multiply it and save yourself a step. But I'm going to just do exponent. Now, do I do 36 minus 2 or 2 times 6? Well, negative 2 times 6. I do this first. So 36 minus 12, which is 24, right? So this was just plugging in, just substitute 6 in for x, and then now do the order of operations, which is what this section is that we're doing, that we're working on. So 3y minus y squared over y times y minus 2 when y equals 5. So we have this big expression there with a fraction and all this other stuff. So we're going to say 3 times something minus something squared over something times something minus 2. Right, so what goes into the blank? 5 for all those blanks, right, because they're all y's. So what do I do first? Well, remember the top, the numerator is like it's its own parenthesis, right? So I'm going to finish in here. So I'm going to do this first. I'm going to get, let's see, we're just going to come down here. 3 times 5 minus 25. And then what do I do next? I do 3 times 5. What is 3 times 5? 15 minus 25. And then I'm going to come up here, give myself some more space in case I need it. It's going to be what? Negative 10. 15 minus 25 is negative 10, right? The different signs, you subtract, keep the sign larger. And then in the denominator, I have work to do inside here. This parenthesis doesn't mean anything, but the other one does. So this is really going to be 5 times 5 minus 2, which is 3. Right, 5 minus 2 is 3. And then what is 5 times 3? 15. And we're just going to bring the 15 over here. So negative 10 over 15. Does anything happen to that? Yeah, 5 goes into both of them, right? How many times will 5 go into 10? Twice. 15 3 times. So this is negative 2/3. And then 4x cubed minus 6xy plus 2y squared when x is 2 and y is 3. So here you're given x's and y's and you're told values of both of them. So I'm going to write down my thing here, 4 and then something cubed minus 6 times something, right? That's x and y. This is x here. And then plus 2. Uh-oh. My thing is acting up again. Plus 2 times something squared. And that's that y squared there. So I'm going to take the 2 and plug it in blue. So x is 2, so it's going to be a 2 here for cubed. It's going to be 6 times 2 times y, and then plus 2y squared. I don't have that. Don't know what y is just yet. So now I'm going to take it and say, okay, let me plug this in brown. For y equals 3, nothing there, so 6 times 2 times 3. And then here, 2 times 3 squared. That's my y. So for order of operations right here, do I have any parentheses? The answer is no. I know I have some up here, but in terms of order of operations, it's what you can do inside the parentheses. So here you can't do anything inside them, right, in any of these parentheses. So, but I do have exponents. I have 2 to the third and 3 to the second. So this is going to be 4 times 2 to the third is 8, minus 6 times 2 times 3, plus 2 times 3 squared is 9. So then I'm going to start doing this. This is going to be multiply. I keep going. I get another multiply. I got another one, but it's involving something else. I'm going to leave it alone right now. Another multiply. So we have 32. We have 32. Then we have minus 12, 6 times. So it's 12 times 3. And then plus 2 times 9 is 18. Right? So that's this one, that's this one, that's this one. Now let's see, I have 32, I have plus 18, and 12 times 3 is 36, right? It's negative. So 32 minus 36 plus 18, I'm going to take this. 32 minus 36 is 4, but it's negative plus 18. And then I'm going to combine those. Negative 4 plus 18 is what? Negative. That's not right. What do I do with negative and a positive? I tried to add them together, didn't I? I know you were screaming at the screen, right? I was seeing if you were awake. No. What do? A negative and a positive, you subtract. So 18 minus 4 is what? 14. And it's going to be what? Positive. So I hope this helps you out with the order of operations.